This is First Up with Kane Cornes. Thanks to Sportsbet, I'm Sarah, Olle and Kane. Let's head straight to the Apple Isle and Ninja Stadium, where we've seen the first draw of the season. And remarkably, it was between last year's premier in the Brisbane Lions and the team that finished 17th in North Melbourne. Extraordinary scenes.
Oh, they had all the momentum. There were some free kicks there. But I mean, they kicked 4 goals 5 in the last quarter, North Melbourne, after struggling to score for most of the day. Bailey answered there. There were some interesting free kicks paid late. There was one for kicking in danger against Harry Sheezel. You're going to see Jack Darling bob up and kick 2 goals in the last quarter, and he looked as though he was going to be the match winner. And both teams had their opportunities to win this game of football. Cam Rayner, the contested mark there, and more importantly, the finish after he should have received a 50-metre penalty from Charlie Common, who tackled him to ground after he marked that. Eric Hipwood had a chance on his left but missed. And then this one as well, late. They just couldn't quite work their way through it. Zerha took the contested mark inside forward 50, but once again, wasn't able to finish a difficult one. But that was the kick inside forward 50 that they drew, because they had better options and more time to find a more favourable option inside forward 50.
It's such a strange feeling when the siren goes for a draw. It's rather flat. Teammates don't know where to look. But Harry Sheezel, Kane, you've been critical of him. That's on the record. What did you make of his performance this afternoon? 29 touches and with 435 metres gained. I would say that some of those were rather handy.
Yeah, I thought he was better today. I liked his kick to handball ratio much better. So 18 kicks. He's been, for me, handballing a little bit too much. But I mean, the criticism was, yes, directed at Harry, but also directed at the way that he's being used. I still think he is not being used to the best of his ability. So 23 of his 29 touches were in the back half. And I did note late they put him to centre bounce when the game was on the line and needed to be won. Let's put our best players around the football. Well, fancy that. So I just think he needs to be used more up the ground so that he can win his possessions in the forward half of the ground and kick the ball inside forward 50 more often, so that will lead to scores because of what a good player he is. So, yep, there was criticism of Harry, but also criticism of Alistair Clarkson for the way that he's being used. And I still think there's a missed opportunity to not put him more midfield centre forward.
To GMHBA Stadium, we head next. And there's something in the water today when it comes to close games. But for the Giants, they've made it 5 wins in a row at Geelong's home fortress. This was an unbelievable game, Kane, that went down to the final seconds in the final stanza of the match.
What a round of football, really. I mean, Dempsey, he's on fire. Like, he's in the All-Australian conversation as a wingman who's pushing hard forward and being able to hit the scoreboard and score. Jesse Hogan will get to in a moment, but these are some of these big last quarter moments where you just did not have any light of sight on the way that this result was going to go. There's a turnover here, Dangerfield defensively brilliant. Probably should have just had a crack, Danger. Probably should have just put the head down and tried to bury it. But yeah, I mean, Riccardi there bobbed up and kicked one against the flow of play, and the Geelong Footy Club had their opportunities. Was it a Dangerfield mark? Was it Blixarves? It was Blixarves. He didn't look like he wanted that set shot to me. Dangerfield bounced up with a footy this and have a crack because he thrives on those big moments. But it was a big miss. But I mean, what a season-defining win for the Giants, because they have been on the road so often. You and I have discussed that. They're going to storm home with a lot of home games as a result. That was a gutsy win after 3 losses. They're now in the 8, and they play that ground better than any other visiting side.
Their 8th venue in 9 weeks. Just to reiterate how hard it's been for the Giants. But Kane, I've got 2 words for you. You mentioned them before. Jesse Hogan. How good was he? 7 goals again, and late to death, he went back and he was just commanding that defence. He is such a joy to watch.
I still think Cozzy Pickett's performance at the MCG was the best individual game I've seen this year when Melbourne beat Fremantle, but this would be second. So 22 and 7 goals, 9 marks, and they had 0 answers for what he was doing. So I just thought his strength in the contest today, and he dropped one late also in the last quarter, so he could have had, he might have been able to kick 10 if he made the most of his opportunities, but he's one of those forwards that can genuinely kick a bag. Kicked 9 earlier on in the year, 7 today, second on the Coleman from only 6 games behind Ben King after winning the Coleman medal last year. So what a weapon he has turned out to be for the Giants, and that's as good an individual performance as you'll see this year.
You mentioned that you think it's probably the best round of footy we've seen so far in 2025. And we had a game at the MCG, 16th up against 18th. And would you believe, Kane, it was an absolute humdinger. This one between Richmond Adamuse's side just getting the win over Andrew McQualters. It was heartbreak, wasn't it, for West Coast, who could sniff their first victory of the year, but it wasn't to be.
Yeah, I thought it was Harley's best game. We'll get to that in a minute, but that was the goal that he kicked. And West Coast had their opportunities, as did Richmond. They kicked inaccurately in the last quarter and probably had the more dominant statistical numbers. I mean, Tom Lynch missing that, it's almost unforgivable for a player of his experience and ability. So they did miss some opportunities. As I said, these are some of these big last quarter moments. But West Coast, here it is. You got one opportunity with 40 seconds to go, and Tom Brown saves the day with the tackle, obviously. Inspirational, full length, full speed. Not sure there was a bounce that needed to be taken, and a shepherd would have been nice. Andrew McWalter, you can tell, welcome to coaching. That is rough. And there's the flip side. Adamuse, very, very happy. So one tackle and the difference between a very good day in the coach's box or a heart-wrenching one.
As you just said, it's the agony and the ecstasy there with that late Tom Brown tackle. And for Andrew McWalter, you could see how heavy this loss was weighing on his shoulders. He did, however, compose himself post-match.
We're not looking for a short-term fix here. We're trying to build a way of playing and the behaviours that we think will win for a long period of time. So there's some little wins we're having along the way. We're judged by win-loss, I understand that, but we're getting a lot of experience that will help these guys, particularly our younger players, for a long period of time. So we'll just keep looking into that and find our little areas where we're having some success in and hopefully singing the songs not far around the corner.
So it's West Coast's only game at the MCG. What did you make of Harley Reid's performance? It was the 18 disposals, that beautiful running goal that we just saw, but also moments of ill discipline. He gave away 5 free kicks and he leads the comp in that department when it comes to giving away frees, Kane.
It was the full package, but I actually really enjoyed his game because I thought when the game was there to be won, like so some of this stuff was just really clever, and I thought he had a real crack. I kind of like this as well. Tom Lynch went and had a crack at him at three-quarter time, and this was the response. So, I mean, we're going to see a lot of that over the next 10 years. But as we said last week, and I volcanoed the lack of help around him, he's got no help. And I can't for the life of me work out why Adamuse didn't tag him today, because he was the one West Coast player that looked as though it was going to be the match winner with efforts like this. Just runs too far, clearly. And whether that's a free kick, probably was, but the umpire didn't have the theatre, but that's okay.
No sense of theatre, Kane.
No, there isn't, and he paid the right call. But, I mean, they were the efforts that I loved, and when the game was there to be won, I thought he tried really hard. And I don't know if you can always say that about Harley. I'm not sure he always tries really hard, as simple as that sounds, but today he did, and I could tell how much he wanted to win. So it was a full experience, but I really enjoyed his effort today.
Well, you always try very hard when it comes to Volcano, so let's head there now. It's time for Volcano.
I did note that Michael Christian has handed out his MRO findings from the showdown last night. Unforgivably, there's no fines for staging on that MRO sheet. So let's have a look at these staging incidents from 3 Adelaide players. In fact, 2 Adelaide players, but 3 incidents. Look at the goal square there with Worrell. That is a touch and a flop. So I'm going to send this vision to Michael Christian. He's keen with the flop, and thank goodness the umpires didn't get sucked into this. They umpired it very well. If that's not a fine for staging, I don't know what is. And there's 2 here. So Butts, you're going to see top of the goal square, and then Worrell again with the Superman arms out. Let's have another look at the Superman arms there from Worrell. So 2 of the worst examples from him, as much as I like him as a player that I've seen in terms of staging. So I hope Chris O watches this show, Sarah, and I hope he reviews his findings from last night, and I hope he makes an amendment to that and sends a pretty strongly worded message to the Adelaide Football Club and a financial sanction for 3 or 4 of the worst flops that we've seen this year. And well done to the umpires for not getting sucked into that. I reckon it's sneaking back into the game, not just the Adelaide players, but across the board. And I think if we want to be serious about stamping it out, we've got to sanction these players with the only vehicle we can, and that's through the MRO, and then naming them and finding them.
Kane, we had an absolute ripping showdown. It was so close that a player from the losing side actually won the medal, and you're focusing on flopping. Were there other storylines that you liked a little bit more?
Well, because the difference in the game, like Isaac Rankin got a free kick, which led to a Darcy Fogarty goal from the top of the goal square for a very, very minor incident with Zach Butters. So we're talking about a tight margin that is affected by players doing that. and then Darcy Fogarty hits the post out on the full, and then he's having a shot from the top of the goal square. That's a goal. The game's decided by 5 points. And that wasn't the only one, mind you. I thought Zach Butters probably had an iffy one on centre wing where exaggerated contact as well. So it went both ways. But let the players decide the game. Let's not let the acting decide the game.
On Saturday at Marvel Stadium, it was Essendon holding off a fast-finishing Sydney Swans. And you like what they're selling, Kane. In fact, you like the Bombers under Brad Scott so much that you think that they've got shades of Hawthorn under Sam Mitchell. And you've got a few points as to why that is. Take it away.
Yeah, I'm all in on Essendon. Not so much for this year, but for the next 2-3 years after this. I think they're the next Hawthorn in terms of their build. So love the stability. The coach is very good. The captain is very, very good. They're both locked in long term. The key personnel from a playing point of view that they have identified, you've got an elite key forward in Caddy. He's a freak, like an athletic freak, competitive, 19 years of age, would you believe, second season. Kako's an elite small forward, not yet, but will be. 2 midfield bulls in Durham and Caldwell, so you love the defensive inspirational acts that they provide. They're guns to go with merit. You've got Reed, who now is starting to emerge as a 200-centimetre intercepting defender who looks rock solid, and Martin is an elite half-back. You've got those bases covered. You've got draft capital, pick 4 from Melbourne at the moment, your own pick 11 in the first round. You've got so much salary cap room. And I've just loved their performance this year. Like, I don't expect them to make finals. There's going to be ups and downs, and often the Bombers start well and then fade out. But with their injured personnel that they've got out of the side, to beat Port Adelaide prelim finalists last year, to beat Sydney grand finalists last year with the challenges that they've had, and they're in the 8 before the games today, I think it's been a remarkable performance. And then the age demographic of their list, like 4th youngest in the competition. I would be buying Essendon stock right now. And if I was weighing up a player who was looking for a big contract offer, I think that'd be a pretty exciting team to join.
Do you need to hold your horses a little bit? You mentioned they've beaten Port Adelaide and Sydney, but the teams they've beaten right now sit in 13th, 14th, 15th, 17th and 18th. And we've seen in the first 2 seasons under Brad Scott that the Bombers have a tendency to really drop off post-bye. In both those seasons, they've won just 3 games after they've had the week off.
Yeah, so I'm not so much worried about this year. I think the wins are important, and you know, I'd be hoping that they could get to 10, 11 wins for the year. I think that would be a really good result. I'm more focused on where Hawthorn were 2 seasons ago, where it looked like they were nowhere, and then all of a sudden you go, wow, this team has really progressed quickly, and then you can add a few free agents into your squad like Hawthorn have done, and all of a sudden you're a powerhouse again. So, look, I love what Gold Coast have got. They're just blessed with all the free kick advantages that they've had. But other than that, underneath them, you know, I think Essendon would be the team that I'd be on and pretty excited about for the next 2, 3, 4 years.
I mean, can they play finals, or are you ruling it out? Because it was year 3 under Sam Mitchell
No,
that
I'm
the
ruling
Hawks
it
did
out.
it.
I think the top 8 is pretty set. I don't think they're going to be good enough with their injuries and just the age of the group and the key members missing at the moment. But as I said, a good result would be 10, 11 wins.
Kane Clayton-Oliver is a 4-time best and fairest, a 3-time All-Australian, a premiership player, and now he can add tagger to his CV. This was really curious scenes at the MCG on Saturday. He went to Giant Newcombe. Look, he did an okay job. He limited him to 19 disposals, but only 13 hard yuckers for Clary in return. Were you a bit concerned with this move from Simon Goodwin, who said it was in fact Clayton Oliver's call, I guess, to become a tagger this weekend?
Yeah, I'm not sure about having a $1 million tagger per season. Now, I get Goody pumping him up after the game. I understand that the troubles that Clayton has had, but let's just purely focus from a football point of view. You can't have a player earning $1 million being a tagger. So this is a short-term fix to get him back into the side, to get him feeling better about himself, to give him a task that he can stick to. But this isn't sustainable. Like, to justify the contract that he is on, he needs to be making All-Australian teams. He needs to be doing what Tom Green did today for the Giants, having 38 disposals and 10 clearances. That's what he needs to be doing, not getting 13 and keeping the opposition's best midfielder to 19. That's just not going to cut it. So they had the best opportunity last year. I said they should have chucked their first-round draft pick in for a team that should have traded just to get that contract off their books. It's a giant concern for whoever's coaching Melbourne in the future and their new CEO coming in and all of the football department staff on how to manage this situation, because I'll say it again, you just cannot have $1 million tagger.
You just said whoever's coaching Melbourne in the future. Do you not think it'll be Simon Goodwin?
I'm not certain on that. I couldn't guarantee it. If I had to give you the answer, I'd probably say more than likely. But I think he's certainly going to be questioned, particularly if the same issues continue to arise, and that is the ones that have been there for 4 years, where they just cannot score once the ball goes inside forward 50. And unfortunately, Goody hasn't been able to solve that problem.
And the $1 million man in Clayton Oliver is contracted until 2030. So this is simply a story that won't go away. But for now, let's get to the temperature test, thanks to Sportsbet.
So there it is. I think we've got some obvious teams up the top there, Sarah, who are going pretty nicely. I don't look too much into Brisbane's draw today. That's just a team that's been up for a long time and was flat today. There's some good sides underneath those, including the Suns, who probably are unlucky not to be a rung higher. If they beat Hawthorn next week, they will be. I like Adelaide's season, albeit they weren't great in the showdown, but found a way to win. Bulldogs had a bit of a flat one, and the Cats probably the same. So it's shaping up to be a pretty even top 8. And, of course, the teams at the bottom we know about. And there's some teams in the middle now that are going pretty ordinary and that are going to struggle to make the finals.
Do you put a line through the Sydney Swans, last year's grand finalists? You've got them there as simmering. That might be a tad generous, I think.
Probably. Well, they're pretty good against the Giants last week, so that's the reason there. And they probably should have stolen that one late yesterday, so that's the reason. But I think we've called that probably 2 weeks ago that they're going to struggle to make it, and I don't expect them to feature in September.
Kane, we had a draw this round, and I think 7 of the other games were decided by 15 or fewer points. Wherever you were looking, it was great games of footy, wasn't it, this weekend?
Loved it. The best round of footy so far, I reckon, and just shows if you're not on, any team really can knock you off, as we saw with the late game today. So it makes for a fascinating season and a pretty interesting round ahead.
This has been another episode of First Up with Kane Cornes. Thanks to Sportsbet. We'll see you again next week.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.